Welcome to another edition of Top Lines and Tails. This week we are sponsored by Harbro, suppliers and manufacturers of quality livestock nutrition. Continuing with our series looking at modern livestock operations, we go to one of the best known prefix names in the UK beef and sheep business, Allanfauld in central Scotland, to chat with father and son duo Archie and John McGregor. Great to speak to you guys.
Good to speak to you, Andy.
Yeah, how you doing, Andy?
Archie, your father Duncan farmed Allanfauld before you, running Blackface ewes. How much of the original farm would be hill land, Archie?
At that time, it would be about 90% hill land. It wasn't until the late 1960s, early 70s that we took advantage of the grants and drained quite a lot of it and reclaimed parts of it. So, I mean, even yet, I would say it's about 75% hill ground.
Back then, you'd be mainly crossing the Blackies to border Leicester for breeding mules, would you be? How many ewes would you run back then?
Actually, in the 1950s, my father ran what we called at that time a flying flock. He just bought in draft ewes and bought in ewe hogs and didn't really breed any of his own. The main reason for that was there was a abortion going along the Campsie Hills at that time, and they thought it was best to keep bringing in new stock. So at that time, the ewes were all crossed with the Leicester. It was the border Leicester actually then, and the Gimmers were Gimmer shearlings, as you call them down south. They were actually put to the Swaledale tup, and he liked the first cross Blackie swale for going to the border Leicester. And it wasn't until the 60s really that we moved on to blueface Leicesters.
And would he carry on then breeding a few of your own Blackie replacements as well, or was he still turning them over then?
As I said then, we were breeding a few swale crosses, but my two brothers, Donald and Jimmy, they were 12 and 10 years older than me, so they were on the go on the farm in the 60s, and they had ideas to start a breeding flock.
And you'd also have a herd of suckler cows back then as well, Archie, on the hill?
Well, again, my father just he bought store cattle in Oban and reared them, and he also took on grazers in the summer from local dairy farms. So there was no breeding cows until the 60s. Once we started the breeding cows, we expanded very quickly, and by the early 70s we were up to 200 breeding cows.
And then, of course, you brought in the Charolais maybe a little bit later than that. Whose idea was it to bring in the first Charolais onto the suckler herd, Archie?
Again, it was Donald and Jimmy and my father had heard about the good Charolais calves going to Reston Market. The Robinsons of Snipe House had a very good reputation with their Charolais calves in the late 60s. So they went down just to see them, really. That would be 1969, and they were really impressed with what they saw. And there were a few bulls being sold that day. There was, I think, just about half a dozen bulls, and they actually came home with a bull which cost them the princely sum of 580 guineas.
A good investment, I guess. And what was the bull, Archie? Do you remember?
The bull was called Mindrum Elite, and that bull did tremendously well for us. Well, we'd been working with Hereford and Angus bulls at the time, and the first calves we had off them, the college did did weighings on them, and the autumn-born calves, when they went to grass, averaged 100 weight or 50 kilos heavier than the average of the rest of the calves, and weaning came, they were 100 weight and a half or 25 kilos heavier. So we were quite committed by that time.
And basically turned the whole suckler herd over to the Charolais bull.
We had some Ling cows, and we had a Ling bull for them, but it was mainly Irish blacks and blue greys. We were buying the best we could get our hands on, so that side of the herd was very good quality for the time anyway.
And you must have had some good cows, because as soon as the Charolais bull went on there, you wouldn't be long before you started breeding a few show calves straight away, yeah, Archie?
Yeah, well, we mucked about at the local markets, and we started getting a reputation, getting a very good trade. And I mean, compared with most other people were still in the Anguses and Herefords, and and we were a step ahead.
And Jim McKechnie would come and buy a few show cows from you in the beginning. Jim was an able man for sure, meticulous, knew what he was looking for, didn't he?
He certainly did. I learned an awful lot from Jim McKechnie. The first time he came out was 1975, and he took out a notion for a silver steer calf we had, and anyway, we sold it to him privately, and that one was Silver Lining, he was called. And he took him to Smithfield that first year, and I think he was third in his class. But the following year, he just won every. Well, I'm saying he won everything, but it was between him and Bullock Billy Glazebrook had. It was called Flashy Boy, another Charlie Bullock. The pair won all the shows between them, really. And the following year, he came back, and I sold him a wee calf, just it would only be 200 kilos, and he got it back and put it on a nurse cow, and that was Fizz.
Uh-huh.
He came out during the summer, and he asked me if I would go to Smithfield with him. And I said, well, I tell you what, I'll go to Smithfield with you if you allow me to show one of my own. I took a calf of my own down, and that was and quite a year for us.
Uh-huh. Well, Fizz went on and won Supreme, didn't she? And you got into the championships as well, Archie, I think.
Aye, Mr. Chips, the one I took down, was Reserve Baby and then Reserve Steer. We were getting tipped to go all the way with the two of us, but we got beaten by a heifer. Much was reserved with a heifer.
Yeah, and Jimmy went on to be a hard man to beat down there. There was a hierarchy of 3 or 4 of them, weren't there, with the Charolais calves. But you carried on showing a few for yourself and then selling the rest in the Cali, didn't you? Archie, the people would start coming looking for them.
And I would be haltering maybe 25, 30 calves between autumn born and spring born to sell at the Cali. At that time, I kept really the heifer calves for ourselves. We finished the heifer calves and sold the steer calves, with 1 or 2 exceptions that we kept over the years. But that was how we were. Mainly, we were actually selling our show calves at United Auctions. Brother Donald became a director of the Cali, so we thought it would be better for them. Actually, we took the buyers with us. I wondered if they would come to the Cali, but they came in their droves at the finish up.
Certainly, and some of the calves would end up in London. I remember going down there in, I think, 76 or 7, my first year, and they seemed to be every other beast was bred by Duncan McGregor Limited. I wondered who the hell Duncan McGregor was. So you were getting, people were buying the calves to go to London, weren't they?
They were indeed, yeah. I mean, I remember one year in particular, I think up to there was 75% of the first calves there were sired by Vagabond.
Smithfield would be the goal for everyone, wouldn't it? I mean, we've delved into its murky past previously on this podcast, but it was a great place and a great occasion, and something special, wasn't it, London?
Oh, it's something that could never be repeated, really. We looked forward all year to going to Smithfield, and the fun we had down there, and the friendly rivalry, it was tremendous.
Yeah. And John, were you at London?
I was there 3 times, I think. Yeah. To be honest, London was. I was quite young at the time, but it was fantastic. It wouldn't be in its full heyday like it was like previously. I would probably miss the very best of it. But the first year we were down at London, it was just something special, really. It's to be honest, if London was still the same way as it was then, we would still be showing commercial cattle, I think. But it's just not the same as it was.
No, you're right. I think the price of calves, well, I'd say the price of calves maybe fell when London stopped, but that's probably not true because it's still a hell of a price these days, the crossbred calves. And Archie, eventually you won it outright in 1998, moving on a bit, and the cattle had altered a bit by then, hadn't they? But the quality had improved right across the board, hadn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think really once the Limousins came into their own, the quality improved very quickly. You know, it was. But you could still, having said that, if you had a good Charolais heifer, you could still win it. Mm-hmm. You were asking about the murky past at Smithfield, but we had a lot of fun when I went there as a boy. Really, Jim McKechnie's team. Jim had weird and wonderful ideas. Well, at that time, Shaw's coat dressing was the only one that we hadn't all the limo shines and the glues that they have nowadays. So Jim would love to make up his own potions, and well, they seemed to work. I mean, Jim was a master dressing cattle and a master at producing cattle with hair. And I mean, some of them didn't smell very good, but you'll have heard about the old days, Andy, when with Angus cattle especially, when a little arsenic was fed to make it grow. Well, Jim got this into his head that he would like to do something like this, and he had heard that some sheep dip contained arsenic, so he got me to delve into that and see if we had any. And I did come across some that had a wee bit, so I gave it to him, and so he was spraying them every day with this. I don't think he killed any, but he seemed to produce plenty here. So another thing with Jim, well, both Jim McKechnie and Jim Donald, if there was a beast off their food, the first thing they would look for was his moudy hillocks or molehills to that end. And us boys were setting out to look for earth to put into the cattle's feeder. And the best place to get it was a graveyard. So we would go around the graveyard looking for food from a newly dug grave. Anyway, it seemed to work. I don't know. I've never fed it to my cattle.
I certainly heard Ian Anderson mention a similar story about going out looking for earth, and the middle of London wasn't the easiest place to find any amongst all that tarmac, that's for sure. And then moving on, Allanfauld decided to go down the Pedigree Charolais route, and what were the initial foundation cows that started the Allanfauld herd?
Well, I had a notion to get one or two pure Charolais, and I actually was at Perth, and the first cow I bought was a Mearns cow with a calf at foot. She was about 2,500. And then we went on a young farmer's trip to Wheatrig down in Ayrshire, a well-known Ayrshire herd, and they had a wee side line which was a few Charolais cows. But anyway, he mentioned that he was going to be selling them. They were too much bother. He wasn't going to keep them. So I came home and nagged at Donald and Jimmy and Father, and we went back down the next day and bought his small herd. And there was a calf running at foot with him, a bull calf, and so that was the first bull, Charolais bull I took to Perth, which was 1978, and he was champion. I think he was quite lucky to be champion, to be fair, but anyway, we got 2,500 for him.
That's not a bad start, and let's talk about Allanfauld Vagabond, and he was by Brampton Petition, is that right? An impeccable son, and he was out of an imported French female. Where was she bred, Vagabond's mother?
I got her from Pete Best. That day I was looking for a present for my wife, Libby, and I took a right notion for this heifer. She was, well, the Charolais folk wouldn't like me to say this, but I thought her to be a white Limousin. Really, she was very tight-bellied and long, and she was just a lovely heifer. She was reserve champion at the sale, and I got her for 2,000. She was in calf to impeccable, and her first calf was a bull calf, and I took him to Perth and got 3,000 for him. Her second calf was Vagabond. Well, I had heard about Petition. Albert Connolly and David Benson had talked me into trying Petition. I tried on her, and Vagabond appeared. As soon as I saw him, I knew I had to keep him, and I didn't know how to break this to Libby. Well, the way I ended up getting round it, when he was about a year old, a neighbour of ours who bred show calves, Ian Morton, I got him to come and look at it, and he loved it as well. So I sold him a half share, and a few years later, well, Ian did very well with calves off him as well, and a few years later, I gave him back more than he paid for the half share to get the semen right. So that was fun, and we had him for, he was about 13 or 14 when he died. He was obviously a great earner for us.
Yeah, and Vagabond could breed cross calves, couldn't he? But and pedigrees as well, and it's a rare bull that does both. And he became a bit of a legend, didn't he? And his calves certainly won their share of prizes. And as you said earlier, at the Calais and at Smithfield and everywhere else in between, really. And that was a pretty good advert for selling semen, wasn't it? People were queuing up to buy it.
Oh, it was. It was. We sold a big lot of semen, and I would say, to be fair, that his reputation was more on the cross-calf side than the pedigree side. At that time, most of the pedigree breeders were in for these big Tattenhall Impeccable type of bulls, which were slightly a good lot different from Vagabond. But the pedigree people who were using Vagabond were the ones that were wanting to breed a bull to breed quality calves.
And Jeff Bellis won Smithfield in 1992, I think, with a Vagabond calf. That was a good beast. I dressed a steer champion that year and was beaten by two Charolais heifers. And he kept producing these calves. The Vagabond actually has sired 1,000 pedigree registered calves, and it must have done Allanfauld prefix a lot of good, and your bank balance a lot of good as well.
Aye, going back to Jeff Bell and Starlight. Well, you dressed her as I actually dressed Starlight for Jeff. So. But Starlight had a story too. She was out a pure Limousin cow, and I weaned her, which was just a wee tote, and I thought I would just try it at Calais because I knew there was some show folk going, and I took her there. She was 200 kilos at the Calais that day, and she made £5 a kilo. She made 1,000, and Jeff bought her. And Jeff had bought a lot of cattle from us. He bought breeding cattle from us as well. And that summer after he bought Starlight, he was coming out of Bedlands Gate, and so he was having a dispersal. So my father and I went down to the dispersal, and I went down with the intention of buying Starlight back, but Jeff was quite sure I wasn't going to get her back, so he actually, it was his grandson. He bought it in his grandson's name anyway, so it was shown at Smithfield in his grandson's name. I thought she was a super animal, a tremendous shape of an animal.
She was a super beast, and as I said, there was another Charolais heifer. I think was Bert Verity maybe was reserved to her as well, and I was dressing the steer and got beaten by those two. So you started the herd of Charolais. Would you show the Charolais back then? Would you get out in the show circuit with them, Archie?
Not very much. We did show an odd one, and we tended to sell most of the bulls privately. We had a few successes at Perth too. We had a great trade for Vagabonds, kind of 5, 6, 7,000 kind of thing at that time, but it wasn't until Simpson's Greg came in the go that we started winning more age group championships anyway at Perth.
And you shared Simpson's Greg with Donald McPherson, is that right?
We did indeed. Donald and Ewan. Ewan at that time still had commercial cows and he needed a Charolais bull, and so did Donald. They had their own herds then, and Greg fitted the bill. And I never thought he would be one to breed show cows, but they actually managed to produce a Smithfield winner out of him.
Yeah, of course he did. He bred Donald Barn.
One thing about Greg was I don't think we ever had a Charolais bull calf born off him that we didn't sell as a bull. They were very, very consistent, and he bred tremendous milky females as well. So he was a good pedigree breeder's bull at the time.
And of course, the Charolais breed would stay at Allanfauld and still there just now. And John, obviously, you'd be involved in later on. Give us a bit more of a potted history of how the Charolais have gone on at Allanfauld.
On the Charolais side, after Vagabond and Greg, some of the other bulls that have worked well for us would be Great House Noel, who produced Allanfauld Super Scott, who went on to breed well through different herds in the country. Elgin Da Vinci, and Woodpark Elgin, who both produced a few 5-figure bulls for us, and there's still a lot of cows in the herd. And more recently, Bilmile Jasper, a bull we bought in Carlisle. We bred Allanfauld Neptune from Jasper, who we sold would be our top price bull to date at 20,000, and most of our cows in the herd at the moment are by Jasper, and I'm really pleased with them. They're big square cows and with loads of milk, so he's done a really, really good job for us. We've also enjoyed a few trips over to your side of the water where you are at the moment, Andy, over to France to look at Charolais over there, and I've been very impressed with the herds that we've went round in France. One or two bulls that we've brought from there have done very, very well for us and produced really nice females. We've had a bull Tidorn and Tyrrell, both bred very well. The Tyrrell females especially had character like I've never seen in a herd before. They had great heads and muzzles on them, and they bred very, very well. And just a couple of years ago, we were back over again, myself, brother-in-law Matthew Milne, and Neil Barclay as well, and Magnus. Went over and we had a tour about. We were again looking for maybe to pull some more French genetics back in. We quite like to mix and match a little bit with British and French genetics just to try and keep the blood right and try and pull in new blood as much as we can. And we bought a bull called Oscar by a French bull that's breeding very, very well at the moment. I Love You. He's a great big long bull with a big pelvis on him, and we're getting the first calves are hitting the ground now by Oscar, and they're they look the part at the moment, but time will tell whether they're what the British market is after. So
I'm sure some new genetics won't do the breeding harm. And going back to those early days, Archie, you said you farmed with your two brothers, and I guess you were all on the same farm back then, but you all breed Blackies now under 3 different prefixes. There would have been a moment when you parted ways, I guess.
We had Donald was actually at Burn Head Farm, which was part of the outfit, but a different steading, and later on we bought Dyke Farm, which was a great asset, and so it finished up that brother Jimmy went to the Dyke Farm. Donald actually died in 1978 when he was only 39, and his son Duncan was just a boy at the time, but when he finished university, he came back home and went into Burn Head. So we finished up with 3 farm steadings, and we had a farm that was quite suitable for dividing up with it equally. So we finished up with 3 kind of equal farms: Allanfauld, Burn Head, and the Dyke. Burn Head and the Dyke each got part of the Allanfauld acres, as it were. They were so that we had 3 kind of fairly equal farms.
As I said, all 3 of you went on to breed Blackies under those prefixes, and you still do, don't you?
Still do, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you got a bit more serious into the Blackie trade into the 80s. I suppose the money in the Blackies was starting to get a bit serious by then, wasn't it? And there were some decent profits to be made with the right top, and you took right into it, Archie.
Well, actually, when I left college, at that time we had 4,000 Blackie ewes and we had 200 cows, and I just lived and dreamed Blackface sheep, and I wanted to come back home and be a shepherd, more or less, but there wasn't a place for me, so I reluctantly got landed in the cattle side, and but of course once I get into it, I really loved that side as well, and so it was quite fortunate that happened then. But as far as the Blackies go, in the 60s we started a breeding flock, and we bought Blackies from some of the top flocks at the time: Connaughton, Gas, Charolais, Cairngorm, Wheatshaw, and these were Kill as well. These were the basis of our Blackie flock, and we went to Connaughton every year and bought ewe lambs. Our trailer load about 50 ewe lambs every year, and one of these ewe lambs, when bred to a Midlock top that we bought for 3,200, produced a lamb that we sold for 10,000 in 1978, and now that was the first 5-figure pup of any breed sold at Lanark.
Wow.
So we landed fairly lucky there. It took us a year or two before we really started getting in the higher prices again, but we bred a tup in 1986 called Sergeant Pepper. We had sent 2 ewes up to Connaughton to get tupped, and one of them produced this tup, Sergeant Pepper. and the father of him, he was called Highland Fling, and so because we had this good lamb of him, we actually bought Highland Fling that back end, and it cost us 11,000. But he never actually, he bred all right, but he didn't breed as well as Sergeant Pepper did. Sergeant Pepper was a bit of a legend, really. He bred very well for us, and I think it was in '89 we had a lamb at 14,000 off him, one at 7,000. But for years he bred very good stuff for us.
The Blackies aren't a breed that I know a lot about, and excuse me for asking dumb questions. But would you run a nucleus of the very best sheep that you're breeding from for the pedigree flocks, or would you just run the tops across the entire flock and get what you get?
Oh, we tried to bring good tops across the whole flock. I mean now we're putting about 800 ewes to the Blackie top. I mean, we're running 1,600 ewes of different breeds at the moment. But 800 of the Blackies go to the pure top, and probably about 600 go to the blue-faced Leicester.
I see. You'll know which the good breeding lines are, obviously, but theoretically you could be bringing top sale tops out of any one of those 800, I suppose.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not a pedigree breed, the Blackface, but we've kept records for the last 30 years. And so we can go right into the background of every ewe on the farm. So we know the background, and we try and match them to the most suitable tops. And I mean, we've got a lot of deer tops over the years, but a lot of our most successful tops haven't been very dear. Well, that was Sergeant Pepper, a homebred one. We had a 1,600 one that we bought from brother Jimmy after we split up. We called him Dyke White Nose, and he bred a lot of money for us, and very good females. So and then this recent one that's done well, he cost 3.5. Well, he actually only cost us 1,750 because we.
And you started showing the Blackies too in the 80s, I suppose. You won your share, didn't you? You were winning in at the Highland fairly early on in the 80s.
We always showed at local shows, and had a bit of fun and rivalry with the neighbours. Nothing very serious. We split up in '91, and after that I started showing Blackies at the Highland as well, and we've won the Highland 3 times.
And you're still at the top of the breed 30 and 40 years on. Fast forward to this year, 80,000 for a top that goes back to one of your show ewes, Archie, and another one 38,000, 26,000, 20,000. One hell of a trade, and they're all by a 3,500 tall hurler. How come he came so cheap?
The 20,000 one wasn't. We actually bought some semen off 160,000 top, and we flushed a ewe to him, and we got a 20,000 and an 18,000 one out of her too. So, but the rest of them were mainly off the 3,500. We've been quite successful with the Hurley tops over the years. The last one that probably did a great job for us was one that cost 60,000, but there was 5 of us bought him in partnership, and so he wasn't too daft, and he actually bred 5 figure tops for every one of the 5.
So he wasn't so dear. But this one here, the Delhara top, you've £3,500 one. You got him in a partnership as well. So
yeah. I was it was a piece of luck really, because we were dead keen on him. There were 2 good Delhara tops we thought in the pen that day, and we were swithering about them. But the one that was going in second was the one that we actually liked best, and. So we thought we'd have to pay a bit of money for him, so we were speaking to Michael Wood before they went into the ring, and he said he would like to share him. I think we would have gone to a lot of money, well, quite a lot of money for him. The other one actually made 60,000. So,
it's not all luck, is it, Archie? At the end of the day, it comes down to the good eye, but you just, it sounds like you got lucky on that one, that you caught him just right.
He was one of those ones. He was probably a bit of a rough diamond. He wasn't perfect by any manner of means, but he had some very breedy bits about him, and he had some. He just had that wee bit looking out of him that it looked like he could be a breeder. But we've bought some like that before, and they haven't been a breeder. So there's a bit of luck involved in everything.
As you said, it's just getting the right luck on the right day. And just moving back a little bit, next came the Pedigree Limousines at Allanfauld. And when did the Limousines come in, and where did those first females come from?
Most of the early Limousines came from Bert Leach, who had some pure Limousines in Mull, and he kept them very commercially. I knew him quite well, so I thought it would take some to try them. But actually, brother Jimmy bought some from him as well, and a lot of them were the basis of the good Dyke Limousines too. And but I've bought odd ones over the years, but I would say that these ones were probably the basis of the herd.
And you used a bit of Cannon to start with, I see. And what other bulls have influenced the herd that's taken it to where it is now?
We had a bull Bailey Image that we bought 17,000 that we shared with David Bailey at Cala. He held the kind of record for a limit at Stirling for a while. Clapton Noble was one we bought for 4,000 at Carlisle, and he bred very good females, and he went on to win the Highland. Actually, we showed him at the Highland and won the Highland with him.
Well, we've done quite well with bulls we bought out of Ireland as well. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, we kind of saw a bit of an opportunity in the Southern Irish market to bring an odd bull over, and they did very, very well for us. So.
The bulls would be a bit thicker back then, John, in Southern Ireland than they would be over here, would they be?
They were, yeah, and at that time you could pick up bulls at handy money. The first time we went over there, we brought an Enifer son back and a Mazdaklo son. They were just basically, we bought them back to turn them over, but the Mazdaklo son actually did very well, and our kind of best breeding cow at the moment goes back to him, a bull called Aberforth Vincent. But so he built a couple of cows and he went away. We sold him at Perth at the time for 6,000, I think he was, but we made a wee bit of money on what we paid for him, so it worked pretty well.
Sure. And then more recently you sold the Limousin herd, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But John, just to fill us in that sort of last decade up to you selling them, because you had some great success there. What helped you on that road?
We had a good bit of success with the bulls Clapton Noble, Haltcliff President, Ardblack Take Time, and an Irish bull that we bought along with my Uncle Jimmy and cousin Donald, Capiduff Aaron. They all bred very well for us, and the females were good off them all, and good milky cows off them all. It's something I kind of tried to watch anyway, is femininity and milk in our females in every breed that we have. I'm a wee bit worried at the moment, to be honest, with the Limousin breed, that they maybe don't. There's too many of them maybe pushing too hard for hard muscle, and we're maybe starting to lack a bit of milk in the breed. But we also got on quite well with some AI sires. We did AI'd a few cows to Willage Tonka, and we managed to produce 2 5-figure bulls. One of them was champion at Stirling. The other one, a bull Allanfauld Ibrox, we get 10,500 for him down at Carlisle. And his mother, Allanfauld Cortina, also bred what I believe is the best Limousin we've bred here today, a heifer Allanfauld Jolene. And she went on to win the Stars of the Future in Stirling. And I actually sold Jolene to Hunters Hall in the spring of the year that we sold the herd. Stephen Nixon came in and he saw her, and he gave me an offer that we couldn't really. I was kind of hoping to take her to the sale, but we got an offer that we couldn't really refuse. So Jolene's went on to do a great job for Hunters Hall. She bred the top priced heifer, Hunters Hall Retha, at Carlisle in May, who sold for 12,000, and she's bred some very good bull calves for him as well. Hunters Hall Overkill seems to be doing a good job, and he looks a very good bull from the pictures I've seen of him. But Stephen seems very, very happy with Jolene, so it's good to see she's going on and breeding as good as she looked herself.
And you went on to sell a bull Nemesis for 27,000 to Albert Howie, and I think you won Sterling 3 times on the bounce. Would that be right? 2013-14, round about then.
Yeah, no, we had a good wee run at that time. I think things were just clicking kind of quite well for us in the Limousins at that time. The first one was a bull was by underwriter. I was speaking to Martin Conway down at Carlisle one day, and at the time we were looking for a bull, but with other bulls running about. But I was looking for something a wee bit different, and he told me that underwriter was, I think he was 9 or 10 year old at the time, but he was still going about, and he said he would sell them. So myself and Stuart Barclay actually, when Stuart was just starting his lums, we shared them. So we bred a bull that went on to be champion and sold for 10,000 at Stirling. And then we had another two championships after that. So we had a good wee run just before we sold the basis of the herd.
And what prompted you to sell the entire herd, John?
About 5 years ago, we got the opportunity to put a hydro system in the farm, which was a big investment at the time. So we had to look at loads of different avenues to try and raise a bit of money. There was an option there that a company would come in and do it, and we would get a rental for it. But we decided we would basically go for it and try and do it ourselves. Which, to be honest, for a few years it was quite tough to try and raise a bit of money every way we could. We sold the Limousin herd, we sold our cross cows, and 2 or 3 different bits and pieces we sold just to try and raise a bit of capital at the time. We sold the Limousins and the cross cows basically on the herd basis, so it tried to save a little bit of tax, and so it's meant it's been a bit longer before we could. The plan was always to build the Limousins back up again. We thought at the time they were the herd that would be the most valuable. The Limmy females are always making more than what the Charolais females are. And so we decided we would just go for it. We'd sell the lambs and then try and build them back up again. So,
what numbers are you back up to now, John?
Look, we're only sitting about 10 cows at the moment. We're just gradually. I've been looking at odd dispersals and bits and pieces, and just try to pick up all good bloodlines that'll hopefully work for us. That we can build a basis of lines through the herd. So.
Sure. They're not easy. As you said, the Limousin females are making a bit of money. They're not easy to buy just now, based on this year's.
No, we were very lucky, to be honest, with Amos's mum, because we took all the cows to the sale. There was 2 cows with I put a decent reserve on them, and if they didn't make the reserve, I was just going to keep them. And one was Elizabeth, who was a great breeding cow for us, and Elegance, and we didn't sell either of the 2 of them. Catherine, my sister, came to me afterwards and asked if we would sell Elizabeth. So we sold her to Catherine, and we took Elegance home. And she had a bull calf at foot, which we sold for, 4,000 or something at Stirling. And then I eyed her when I got her home to Loose Bear Fantastic, and then she then produced a bull at 27,000. So it could as easily have been sold at the sale, which is, it's just, there's wee pots of luck all the time that you just got to laugh on.
You make your own luck. I'm sure it's not all good luck, but you make your own luck. And you guys own Millbrook Playboy now, and I've seen a picture of him. He's got some end on him, and he's out of William Smith's Ginger Spice, and she's making a bit of a name for herself nowadays, guys.
Yeah, I speak to William back and forward on the phone, and I'd actually phoned him up. We've been eyeing the cows, and I just felt like there was 1 or 2 slipping, and they were starting to get a bit stale, and I just thought, I need to get a bull to cover these. And I saw a video of a little bull in Ireland, and I phoned up William to ask him about him. And William says, to be honest, he says, I've got a nice bull here. If you told me about him, and as soon as he told me he was out of Ginger Spice, I was having him. So he basically gave me the option that he sent me videos and stuff, and he was quite raw, but he looked the part. He was just a young calf at the time. He was just a year old. He he had a great head, good in his legs, tremendous structure, and I just thought there's something really nice in this calf. And he'd said to me, well, if you don't like him when you get him, you can feed him on, and we'll turn him over in Carlisle in October. And if you do like him, you can buy him. So when I got him home, we were really, really pleased with him, and we decided to buy him. So
What's he by?
He is by Winfield Park Loma. So he's got show winning cows, and Loma's mum would win the Highland, and Ginger Spice obviously done as well as she did over in Ireland. So he's got tremendous female lines on both sides. So he's a bit of a luxury for us, to be honest, to have a bull that quality here with 10 cows.
10 cows. I'm sure you'll have people queuing up to buy some semen from him very soon.
That's why we decided to put him into centre to get some semen, and I've actually, with the female lines that's behind him, we've taken a bit of sex semen off him as well. So.
And Archie, you judged the limousines at Charolais sale last week. The trade is there just now. They looked a good run of bulls, were they?
Oh, lovely show to judge. Very good quality. That was I've judged Perth and Stirling several times, but the last time I judged the Limies at Carlisle was 35 years ago. And I was just saying to Robert Graham, 35 years ago, but him junior champion as well.
All right. Looked a good bull of his anyway.
It was a great show, very good. I did the 50,000 intermediate champion. He was an exceptionally good bull too. Yeah.
And going back to the sheep, guys, you've had a long time shepherd, David Kinlock. And how long's he been with you guys at Allanfauld?
He came in 1987. He's 7 years, 34 years now. No, David's very reliable. A big help at the sales as well. And yeah, a good all-round shepherd, to be honest.
He's very good with his dogs. He's really keen on the dogs and his dog trials. And yeah, if you're ever needing a job done, we've got quite a bit of ground away from home and stuff like that. David's brilliant for all those jobs. He treats the farm like his own, so which means an awful lot. When we've as many breeds here, they're very time consuming, as you can imagine. So
he treats his farm like his own because he's probably been there longer than you, John. When was it? When was it you came on the farm? How long have you been there? When did you come from college?
Yeah, well, he has. Yeah, well, he's been here. I think I was 2 years old when David came. I came home from college in 2003, so I've been here on the farm ever since. I obviously was here back and forward through when I was at school. I was never really at school. I was always the school classroom windows looked straight onto the farm, so I was staring at seeing what Dad was up to in the hill. So, yeah.
And let's move on to another breed that you guys have had excellent success with, the Texels. When did you start with the Texel breed, John? I believe that was a little bit of your doing.
Yeah, well, we had Texels back. When would it be?
Oh, right to the start.
Basically, when they came into the country, my uncle, like Duncan's dad, my uncle Donald, he was quite keen in the breed back then, and they had them back then. But after he died, they dispersed them. I think they sold a gimmer at the time to Grog Foot for £1,000, which would be a fair bit of money back then. But we used to go down to Kelso to buy an odd tup for the cross shows, and I was always really impressed with the pens of tups that you saw at Kelso, the power and the quality throughout, and they were kind of different to what we were working with the Blackies here. And I'm really keen on the Blackies, but I was looking for something at the time that I could maybe do myself, that I could put my own stamp on. As a young boy, you weren't really getting any say in what happened with the Blackies as such. So it was good to have a breed of your own that you could start on. So when it would be 2001, I think, and Dad had agreed that we would go and start a flock. He said, well, if you're going to buy Texels for anywhere, we'll go down and see Donald McPherson's. So we went down there to try. Well, Donald said he would sell us. I think at the time he needed 5 females to start a flock, and so we went down there and we picked out 4 gimmers. They were really nice gimmers, and then he was showing me in a shed. There was a shed with some young lambs that he was flushing at the time, and we picked out one, and he's like, "No, I'm not selling that. I am not selling that one." So that was fine anyway. So we were at him and at him. No, he wouldn't sell it. So we ended up, knowing Donald, we ended up back in the house, and I was driving, and Dad and Duncan and Donald. Duncan came down with us. Duncan and Donald get onto the whisky, and they get quite well. They get quite well oiled, and anyway, by the time Dad and Donald both fell asleep, and by the time they woke up, they both woke up, stood up, shook hands, and the ewe lamb was in the deal. I still to this day have no idea how that ewe lamb was in the deal. She ended up I flushed it at up Castle Cairn Haydrain as a gimmer, and I got a lot of nice females to him. He was a tup that the Clarks had. Lindsay was going with Pandy at the time, and so I got a shot at him. But out of one of those Castle Cairn Haydrain ewes, I got a tup lamb that I took to Lanark. The first lamb I took to Lanark in 2005. But one or two people had come in about and saw him and thought it was an awfully good lamb. I should maybe be taking him to Lanark. And so I didn't really know any better at the time, but we brought him out to the best of our ability, and he made 30,000. So it was a bit of a shock, but it was quite nice at the same time.
That's a great trade and a great story, and you're right. Donald is a great character, and I actually shared a Texel tup with him myself that we'd bought for 6,000. He bred fairly well for me. Didn't do much for Donald. And you went on and sold a tup called I'm Your Man for 24,000 to Albert Howie again. And Albert is a good customer, isn't he? I hope you send him a Christmas card and a bottle every year.
Yes, indeed. It's he was by a tup. Nat, You're the Man. He was a lamb that I saw in Lanark, and he was a real quality lamb, great back and end in him, and really bright. He was wild. He was like husband having a Blackie background. We liked them to have a bit of spark about them. I don't like sheep to stand in a pen with their head down. You're the Man stood with his head up all day at the sale. He was a wee bit pale of his colour. I got together with a crowd of local boys, and we bought him for 20,000 that year. He's done tremendously well for me. He bred I'm the Man at 24,000, and then he bred me with £22,000 gimmer 2 years later. So.
I was going to say that, and I'm Your Man's bred gimmers for Albert at 20,000 and 15,000 was going on to Hugh Blackwood, another Blackie breeder, and you sold your show gimmer for 22,000, as you said, and she looked a tremendous beast, I have to say.
Yeah, again, she had a great back and end in her, and to be honest, it's the first thing I look at in a Texel, that they need to have a back and they need to have an end. The big boxy heads would come after that, but I think the right bits need to be right first, and she had that.
That job is maybe changing now. Maybe at one time it was all heads and they were losing the carcass. I think maybe the Beltex is keeping them honest. I don't know, but there's a bit more shape coming back into the Texels again now. Would you say?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think when you see the lambs that are making money, and to be honest, the shearling jobs, there's a good bit of money to be made in these shearlings now. Well, they need to have quality carcasses for the shearling job. So.
Yeah, the shearling job and the female job is serious as well now. I mean, these gimmers are making a trade. And how many Texels are you running there now, John?
We're running 30 ewes. I flush 15 of them every year. I'm basically concentrating in my very best lines now. So was having so many different breeds, we can't have Texels, and we've got some Leicesters there. We can't have a big flock of either of the two of them. So we just have a small nucleus of we think is good ewes, and we just concentrate on them.
Moving on, you've got a top flock of blue-faced Leicesters again, and down to you, John, probably. What are the highlights there? Again, it's not a breed I know I'm up to speed with.
Well, I don't know if I would call it a top flock. We're working them up. We've been trying to build up with some good lines. With Dad and David, they're very keen in the Leicesters as well. They're more so, like with the Texels, probably I'm the one that's pushing them myself more than anything. But the Leicesters, everybody's kind of getting a say in with them. So, but yeah, they're bred from Nunscleuch and Carry House, as are probably our two main lines at the moment. Just two lines that I thought Nunscleuch were always famed for they were probably the first ones we heard of that had the crossing type Leicester. And I knew Martin Archersman was coming out with some really good mule ewe lambs, and at the end of the day, that's the most important part of them. So we're trying to concentrate on breeding sheep that'll produce a quality mule ewe lamb. So.
The thing about the blue-faced Leicesters, we're crossing about 600 Blackies with them, so you're actually seeing how well they're crossing, and that's what you can sell them on. It's their crossing ability, even more so than what they look like. Some of them surprise you, but it's quite interesting.
You're saying they're not easy to breed to type from their looks there, Archie, but I suppose with that many, you'll be breeding your own replacements anyway, so yeah, you get a good insight into it.
Yeah, we're breeding our own replacement as much as possible. We'll have to buy an odd stocked up right enough, but it's handy that you, well, both in the we've got blue Leicester tuck hogs and Texel tuck hogs that we can use in our own use.
Sure. And you say buying the odd one in, you bought one in Howgirl Tup for 30,000, I think, in a share a few years back.
Yeah, no, he's done well for us. We didn't get a great go with him the first year. Our AI didn't work very well, and we flushed a few ewes. The embryos didn't hold very well, so we only got a handful of tup lambs by him last year. But the only embryo tup lamb we got was actually probably the best Leicester lamb we've had to date, and we sold a share privately of him back to Hugo.
Okay.
We kept a share of him ourselves. So.
And you've had 4,500 for a gimmer, I think, going back?
Yeah, we had a hog in at Stirling. She was out the Carry House shoe. She was by K1 Carry House and now the J60 Carry House shoe that we have. Yeah, she had some real good blood behind her, and yeah, that brought a few people in to see her. Brought them up to Stirling to see her just with the breeding that was in her, and seemed to work well.
And how many Leicesters do you keep in there now?
Probably too many. I think there was 30 of them went to the top this year, but we're really thinking 20 will be enough of them.
Well, we're flushing the best ones, so we're getting numbers that way.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And to be quite honest, a Leicester lamb reared in a cross ewe is probably a bit stronger than one reared in a blue ewe.
You said it, I didn't. And the demand for blue Leicesters is still growing, though. It's a breed that's on the up just now, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. I mean, both kinds. It's the main crossing breed on the black face, and it's the kind of posh kind, or the pure kind, is probably the main crossing breed on the Cheviot too. So it's a change. It used to be the border Leicester that was in the Cheviot, and it's now the blue Leicester.
Going back to the cattle, do you have a herd of Ling? You mentioned Ling earlier on. You breed some of the Lings pure as well, do you? That's the breed that's on the rise just now.
After we sold the limbs and the cross cows, we were basically looking at the farm, thinking how I thought the hill was starting to get a bit rough. The top end of the hill was starting to get a wee bit rough, and we were needing cows that would go out and graze the top end more so than probably the Limmies or the Charolais would. The Limmies and Charolais were off and out in the hill. In fact, my summer calvers or Charolais cows are out in the hill at the moment. Uh-huh. But yeah, we were looking for a kind of hill native breed, and I'd had a feeling at the time that things were maybe going to go a bit more native with all this greening and everything. This road were going down, so I'd always a notion for a native breed, and I just thought the Ling was the one that suited the farm the best. We could hope the aim is to outwinter them, so they're a hardy cow. They're not too small a cow, so I just feel you need weight gain at the end of the day, don't you? There's no point in breeding a wee hill cow that you don't get enough power in your calf at the end of the day. So the Ling I just thought fitted the bill for what we were doing, and we didn't have a real plan of what we were going to do with them. It was just whether we were going to go down the pure road. My main aim was I thought we've got Charolais bulls here, we'll just build them with the Charolais. But me being me, having a pedigree head in me, we kind of are putting them all to the Ling bull at the moment. We'll see how that works. We might end up going to the Charolais bull yet.
They're a very fertile breed. We've got a very close calving pattern, the ones we've got, and they're handy for putting an odd embryo in as well, which is another reason we thought would keep them. Indeed,
and they are in demand. I have to say that we are the Ling breed, and chatting to John Scott on our podcast last week, and him saying it's damn hard to buy Ling bulls now. They seem to be sold at home. The breed is definitely on the go.
No, and I can see why. We wanted the heifers in the cubicles this year, just in silage. There was no concentrate at all, and they grew and put flesh on like I've never seen before. They did absolutely tremendous. You can see why they're popular, and they've a tremendous big pelvis in them as well. They're very easy to calve. But that's as Dad was saying. We're now going down a road with we're building the limbs back up. We're IVFing a few limbs and putting the embryos straight into the Ling heifers. They get an embryo as a heifer and then they can run into the herd after that. I don't like to have too much waste. I don't like buying in recips and then what do you do with them after it? Do you need to then try and sell them on, or do you fatten them and kill them? And if you're working with a pure Ling, you've got something that you can, hopefully, you don't wreck it, try to carve an embryo out of it, and you can put it back into the herd once you've had one embryo out of it.
Sure, and obviously from a health status as well. The less you've got to buy in and bring back into yourselves, the better. And am I right in thinking that Libby runs a bed and breakfast still at Allanfauld, Archie?
Well, she does. It's been a wee bit quiet over the last year of COVID, but she does. We've got one chalet and we've a big house now. I had 5 children, but so we've got quite a few. We've got 6 bedrooms in the house, so it's quite handy having people in it. Keeps Libby busy.
So keeping Libby busy, I'm going to ask a question. You run 3 pedigree herds, 3 pedigree flocks, maybe more, and a question we all want to ask, I think, who the hell does all the paperwork?
Well, it was always me, but I'm very lucky now that John's wife Bryony is doing the bulk of it along with Libby. So I've got out of my paperwork and duties more or less. Still a wee bit, but great to have 2 people I can depend on.
It's a full-time job for one person, that's for sure, I'm sure. And how many cattle and sheep do you run at Allanfauld now? Have you totted it up? Over what acreage is the farm?
We'll be farming in total 2,000 acres. Allanfauld itself is 1,600 acres. And then there's we've a farm up at Dunblane, or up at Kinbuck, near Dunblane. And we've also a bit of ground kind of through near Glasgow. Okay. So yeah, there's about 2,000 acres in total. Cow-wise, we'll probably have about 70 cows at the moment between all the breeds. So.
1,600 ewes.
Okay, and Archie, you've had quite a large family, as you say, lots of daughters, lots of weddings to pay for, and one of your daughters, Catherine, that John mentioned just now, is, for our listeners, is now one of probably the top of her game, #1 livestock photographer in the UK, and she's got a father's eye for sure, hasn't she?
Yeah, she always had a good eye for stock, Catherine, and I think that's very necessary. And to be a good livestock photographer, she's got to know what they're supposed to look like. I'm very lucky with all my family, really, and we're a very close family. Catherine's partner is Stuart Barclay, who's in a big way both in machinery and livestock. Hairstone, and my second daughter Caroline, she met her husband at uni. She was at Aberdeen University, and she's married to Matthew Milne, who's Elgin Charolais. And then Lindsay, who's a journalist, she's married to Pandy Clark of Garngauer Texel fame.
Teaglum now.
Well, it's Teaglum. They've just at the moment, so he's Teaglum, and my youngest daughter, Moira, is married to Tim Russell, who's the stockman for Andrew Burnett Limousines.
Okay.
And, Moira helps Catherine as well, and with her bookwork, and as a hairdresser too. So that's the family.
A busy family, obviously all in the livestock. And going back to Catherine, she brought a Blealac Charolais cow, didn't she, which has bred her bulls to 8,000 and 10,000. That was a fairly canny investment. And didn't she just buy a Galloway recently? Archie, did everything.
She did. I haven't actually seen it yet, but I've heard great reports about it. It's supposed to be a very good one. Well, she takes some notions. She actually, John mentioned earlier that she bought a Limousin cow at our sale, and she's just recently sold a bull out of her for what, 8,000, was it, or something? So aye, our wee livestock enterprise is doing quite well.
Certainly it is, and you got a handful of grandchildren. I would say a truckload of grandchildren, actually.
16 grandchildren, yeah. They bring us a lot of fun, and aye, as I say, we're a very close family, so we see a lot of them.
Well, with Libby doing the paperwork and the bed and breakfast, I'd imagine you're doing the grandfather duties, eh?
Some of it.
And both you guys will judge a lot of shoes, a lot of interbreeds as well, I guess. And we're all missing the shows at present. And How do you see the show circuit going? What do you make of the Highland Showcase this year? Can we talk about that?
Can't really get my head round it, Andy. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I mean, it's all young judges. That's good giving them a chance to do it. But it's going to be different going there with no crowd. I mean, that's what we really go to the Highland Show for, is to you get a fantastic crowd of folk at your judging, and it's going to be very strange without it, really.
Sure.
It's given us something to kind of have forward to. So, look, you never know. It might not work really, really well. We just don't know how it's going to work.
Well, I hope so. The Royal Welsh Show has been televised for the last, I don't know, ever so many years, and the whole of Wales all turns out and watches that on the TV. So maybe a lot of Scotland will get to see the show on television, and that'll maybe do it a few favours too.
Yeah. No, the Royal Welsh do a really good job with their televising. It's very good.
Mm-hmm. And John, you're bringing your children into the job now, setting them up with a few badger-faced Texels there, and they might be a bit of a novelty, but there's some trade in that breed as well.
Yeah. Well, Brian and myself, we've got 2 wee boys and a little girl who's just actually started crawling the last couple of days, so it gave us plenty of fun, the 3 of them.
Sure.
But a bit like it's Facebook, I think it does, isn't it? You see things on Facebook and you take daft notions, but I saw these badgers popping up on Facebook, and they were very startling. They're great character, and they're I don't know, they just catch your eye. So I took a little notion on them, and I thought it'd be good to start something up for the time it was the boys, but Catherine's come along now as well, so it'll be for the 3 of them. So for a wee bit of fun, and they are actually they get so much fun out of them because they're so quiet, and well, Andrew's just young enough yet, but Matthew's daft keen on them. He's in fact that keen that I've sold 1 or 2 privately, and it's a bit of a crying match every time.
It wouldn't be a crying match to your bank balance. You've sold them for a fair trade. I've seen them going on.
No, but they've a long way to go. They're a wee bit like the Texels when they come into the country. The breed in general at the moment has too much wool, and I'll need to get the wool off them a bit. And so yeah, there's a bit of work to be done in them. But I think there is a breed there to be worked with. We actually use them on we took Suffolk Cross mule hogs. I use them as recips, but we took them with a badger as yow lambs. Uh-huh. And the lambs out of them are absolutely tremendous. They lamb easily to them, and they have great carcasses on them. One thing about the badger is that they're not hugely tall, but they're very heavy sheep. They've got a deep chest in them. So no, I think there's a sheep there to be worked with.
As I said, it's more than just a novelty value, as you wouldn't do it if it was just that. And John, you even breed Jack Russells, I know, because I tried to unsuccessfully buy a bitch from you last year, and I have to say, you McGregors, you're quite a family between you there. You're into a lot of things. So.
Well, we've got a wee house dog, a wee bitch, Morag. To be honest, we took a couple of litters out just when she was having fake pregnancies, and we just thought it was easier to have pups than. But no, it's worked out quite well. Especially the way this dog trade's going, they were for money that last time. So.
Aye, indeed. Anyway, it's been a pleasure talking to the both of you. I hope our listeners have enjoyed a little bit of insight into the goings on under that Allanfauld prefix, and you guys will have sales coming up pretty much all the year round with the breeds that you've got going on. So I know you're all very busy, but I really appreciate you talking to us on this episode, and thank you very much for your time, both of you.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Good speaking to you.
Right, you take care now.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast, which was kindly sponsored by Harbro, suppliers of quality commercial and pedigree feeds and expert nutritional advice. Visit their website or find them on Facebook for more information. And while on the subject of Facebook, why don't you visit the Top Lines and Tails Facebook page, where you'll find photographs and more information to back up this episode.